Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life.
Over the course of the podcast, we've talked to many guests about their gifts and talents, what their wake-up call was, what brought them from an unconscious state to a conscious state, from living on autopilot to living their life on purpose by their rules. And our guest today is really still finding himself, but the story that he has to share with you about the checkered path and being a lost soul, as he calls it, really can open our eyes to the fact that there are many things that happen in our lives that we believe we might be victim of, or we believe that it's been so detrimental to us that we're never going to be able to pick ourselves up, brush ourselves off, and move on to the next step. But today's guest did just that. And he's created a life and a business where he can help others who are walking or have walked the same path that he did in the past to find themselves, to become more of who they are, and to share themselves with the world in a way that is a miracle. And it's bringing that to the world, which really causes us to find our true purpose, to share ourselves in a way that others can share themselves with the world.
I'm with Tristan Montoya today, and Tristan's a former bartender, nightclub promoter, and self-described lost soul. Tristan began to get his life together after his hard partying, world-traveling recklessness took its toll on his physical, emotional, and mental health. When something had to give, Tristan began to address his deep-rooted emotional sickness and found his way back to health and personal power by diving deep into an exploration of his true nature and spiritual self. Now a professional in the transformational field, Tristan supports others in gaining awareness of their unconscious patterns and supports them in discovering their true potential and joyful expression. Tristan Montoya, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
Absolutely.
It is so good to have you here. And I want to share with everyone, I'm sitting in beautiful Colorado Springs right now with about 6 inches of snow on the ground. And with a lot of envy, I'm looking at Tristan in front of me here and sitting in beautiful Guatemala and soaking up some sun rays. So I wish I was there with you, sir.
With lake views in the back.
Oh, now you had to rub it in and make it even worse.
Exactly.
You know, you sent me a really big bio and some of the directions that you've been in life and some of the things that you're doing right now. Could you share a little bit more than what I gave in the intro?
Yeah, it's been one of the most challenging things to write a bio for me. I must have written 25 different versions, and they always go too long because honestly, my path has had a lot of setbacks. It's had a lot of challenges. It's had a lot of breakthroughs. I've gone in a lot of different ways, and I call that kind of the spiral path of unfoldment. It's not a linear line. You could say that, I left home in search of my true self, but before I did that, I passed through a lot of years of ignorance and unconsciousness, and I just wanted to have fun when I was a kid. And I left home, and I was an angry youth. I was rebellious all the way through high school. I got in a lot of trouble. I was arrested. My dad had to pick me up from jail one night, and breaking and entering, and then there was drug use and all kinds of different things. In high school, we started throwing parties and getting the cops called for that. And I mean, that was my upbringing. And then when I felt my parents encroaching on that, that freedom that I was trying to live with, eventually it pushed me to move out and go in search of something that satisfied me. And travel did it for me. I went to Mexico first and then ended up in Arizona, got my degree at Arizona State. And I tried the straight and narrow. I wanted to do right by my parents. My dad put me through college, and I worked all the way through school as a bartender. And I studied international business and languages, and I wanted to go and embark on some illustrious international business career. And I ended up in Spain right after college. Following a study abroad in Spain, I went back to the town I studied in. And everything looked like I was going to be a club promoter, bar owner. I was doing it. And it was exciting. I had a lot of girls around me. I was the man of the hour. I had the keys to the bar, literally. And then I could get people on the VIP list in the clubs. And somehow my failure, there came a point when that life failed. The success I thought would happen never happened. I suffered from heartbreak because too many, I did experience a lot of pleasure, you could say, with several young women. But at the time, I fell for a couple girls too hard. And I ended up with this heartbreak that I just couldn't deal with. This Portuguese girl came into Spain where I was living, and we had a romance. And when that fell apart, I fell apart. And I've never said that out loud, but I did. That's when I started becoming an emotional wreck. And everything went downhill from there. My hopes at traditional success just went by the wayside. My hopes at a fulfilling romantic partnership fell by the wayside. And I turned all my energy towards being this persona. I call it a persona because then I just became the party guy. I was already had the connections. It was in the clubs. Then I just drank a little more. I did a few more drugs. I started sleeping around, and before long, my life was out of control, and I had no real purpose, and I was fighting hard to try to find some semblance of peace in all this, some hope that I could come out of it, and so I started to strive to become something, and tried a few more international business pursuits. Ended up down in South America, Colombia. And finally, it just hit a wall, and it all came crashing down, and the reality was staring me straight in the face. I had a problem, and I'd screwed up a lot of relationships in the process, and I didn't have a lot of options left.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the wall? As you know, on the Miracle You, we talk about wake-up calls, and it sounds like that was really a long process of a wake-up call for you. Could you tell us a little bit about the wall that you hit?
Yes, that my wall is undoubtedly that undoubtedly occurred in Medellin, Colombia, and I ended up down there in a real hedonistic party place, right? And for me, it was heaven on earth because, they had all the drugs, all the drinks, all the parties, all the women, and the women were absolutely gorgeous. And I had all my vices satisfied, but I became so miserable. And I think what happened, I was doing a lot of cocaine at the time. I was drinking a lot and partying just about every night. I'd wake up each day with a hangover, and I'd try to get myself feeling better by the afternoon. And then as soon as I was feeling better, I'd go out and do it again. And so I was in this vicious cycle. And I remember trying to plan all these different business ideas. I had a few things that I was working on, and nothing was really working. And I remember talking to an American guy that was staying at the same hostel. And he said, "What do you think you'll do when you get back to the real world?" And I was like, I just stopped dead in my tracks. I was like, "What are you talking about? This is the real world for me. This is what I'm choosing." He goes, "Yeah, but and what he was getting at was this couldn't last forever. Mm-hmm. And I had deluded myself into thinking that it could. And I started to get a series of bad news from home. My high school girlfriend died suddenly. And, that news came at a time when I was what I call emotionally constipated. All my emotions, I was so much in the pattern of repressing and suppressing my emotions that all of a sudden, with the death of my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend, my high school girlfriend, who was my high school sweetheart, all of a sudden things started to come to the surface. And one thing led to another. I got sick unexpectedly. I have been the most physically healthy person you have ever met. Perfect attendance all through school, no major illnesses. And all of a sudden, down in Medellin, I start getting sick for a week or two at a time. Some sort of, they call it Medellin, the land of eternal spring. And it has kind of this jungle-like heat down there sometimes. And I just remember sweltering in this heat, sweating through my sheets, burning up with fever, throwing up, and just feeling absolutely horrible. And coming into awareness of the fact that I had put so much drugs and alcohol into my system. I had repressed so many of my emotions. I had done so many unspeakably bad things. I was in financial ruin from some choices that I had made back in Arizona. And all of a sudden, push came to shove, and I realized I was financially broke and now suffering, I was in the threat of going into major crisis with a bankruptcy. I realized that without any money, I had no more options. Except to go home to where my mother lives in Virginia. And I realized that my business pursuits or opportunities were nil. I mean, I was deluding myself. And apart from dealing the occasional gram of cocaine, I didn't have a whole lot that I could do for money. And finally, my family said, don't you see what's going on? And I couldn't see it. And they said, you need to come home. And we're worried about you. And I said, you don't need to worry about me. I'll be fine. But a few more weeks, maybe even a few more months, I don't remember, passed. And finally I said, there's no choice for me but to go home, because I will kill myself slowly here. I am killing myself. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I had nothing left. I had nothing left inside of me to keep sustaining this empty existence that I was living. And I had no choice. I think the most terrifying thing for me was that I had to turn inward and face what they call your demons, right? And I had a lot of them. So that was the new path for me.
Mm-hmm. Through that journey there, if you, like you said, if you wouldn't have killed yourself with the partying or the drugs that you had, or even just experiencing life the way you were, the fact that you had all those repressed and suppressed emotions sooner or later would have started eating away at your body also from the inside. So you're kind of attacking your body from both angles. So a gift actually for your parents and your family to say, okay, it's time to come home. We're ready for you to come and find yourself. What was the path of finding yourself once you got back to Virginia?
Well, basically, my parents were right. My family was right. I had problems. I had some things that I was running away from and that I couldn't manage to face. I couldn't find the strength to face. The alcohol and the drugs were they were a symptom of some underlying issues. I didn't know a lot about emotional intelligence, Vince. I just didn't. I was raised in a family that didn't really honor emotions. They didn't speak about their feelings. And I was a sensitive kid. And I think what came into my awareness was that I was this highly sensitive being that had managed to suppress his real feelings and his true nature for all these years. And I think the most upsetting thing for me was that, wow, I've been diminishing my light. And I had to come into awareness of even what my light was. Like, who was I? If I stopped all this nonsense, who was I? What was I hiding from being? And I eventually found my path was really self-education. I mean, I turned my mother's basement into what I call the student of life university. And I just began studying life and studying others who had been successful, studying myself and why I was unsuccessful, and how I managed to end up in my mother's basement with no options and no opportunities and very few friends at the time, no love life. And I just started thinking, well, how am I going to get myself out of this? And the only thing I could think of was self-help and self-education. And I went to the library and I checked out books on, books, physical books, and then books on tape. I checked out videos and anything I could find that could help educate me as to what was going on in my life and inside of me. And a lot of my early teachers, from Wayne Dyer to Debbie Ford to Marianne Williamson, all of these people were speaking a language that started to connect to me. You know, Wayne had alcohol issues, Debbie had alcohol issues, Marianne had alcohol issues, but they were all pointing to the same thing, and that was a suffering of the soul. And so I began to come into awareness of this emotional sickness, and then eventually what's known as a spiritual crisis or a spiritual emergency. I started to awaken through my layers of pain. Mm-hmm. And it was a horrifying process. I mean, I say this, here I am, I want to encourage people to go through this, but I'm telling you, it hurt. It hurt a lot.
And sometimes sometimes it continues to hurt as you expand and as you grow through things. And you know, the soul, your higher self, gave you a big wake up and really sent you in the right direction, and probably put those books in front of you in a way that really made a difference. You said something that I'd like you to give us a little bit more information about. You said that I realized I wasn't shining my light out.
Yeah.
I think those words probably come from Tristan now and not the Tristan then, but I want to make sure, and because I want if it's true that the understanding that you weren't shining your light came later, I want people to really grasp that if that's the truth.
Yes, definitely. You're right. The person I am now refers to shining his light. The person that I knew then, that person that was buried in self-help and personal development material, he was looking for an answer. He was looking for a glimmer of hope that there was some kind of potential in me that was unexpressed. And I honestly considered myself an unexpressed individual. I knew there was expression in me that needed to find an outlet. And at that particular time in my life, when I was reading so much, I was also finding my expression through writing, and I started a blog right away. I mean, I remember it was my original site was Student of Life, and that was my thing. I was the student of life, and I thought, hey, even with no credentials and no training, I'm just going to write about what I know. And what I know right now is that I'm going through this process. I was knee deep in girls and drugs and booze, and that didn't do it for me. So I started speaking and looking to the hole in my soul, as they say in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started to explore what that was. Like, what is this emptiness? And if I can't fill it with drugs and alcohol and sex, then what wants to happen? What is seeking to express through me? I knew that writing gave me an outlet. It allowed me to put words together in a way that was meaningful, not only to me, but to others. And when people started to connect with my writing and say, hey, I really was touched by that, or that really helped me where I was at, instantly I thought, that's it. That's how I can begin to make meaning out of my life. I can turn around and help others who are maybe going through what I was going through, and I can show them at least parts of the path that I know. I don't know it all. At that time, I was actively in the process of learning to walk the spiritual path. But I knew that I could begin sharing from where I was, and that it would help others, because I chose a really courageous path. I chose to really face the monster head on and just go. Some people try to manage it on the weekends and keep a regular job. My life completely stopped. Mm-hmm. And I was in the basement of my mother's house, just moaning and groaning and grimacing and going through all this inner pain and suffering through depression and anxiety, and trying to really create some kind of breakthrough. What was really wanting to enter my life was my spirit was wanting to come. It was wanting to birth itself. Mm-hmm. What I now know to be my conscious expansion, or my conscious awakening, and spirit was trying to birth itself through all these heavy layers of conditioning that I had, been not only been programmed with, but taken on in my lifetime through all these experiences that happened to me, and things that I put myself through. I had a lot of trauma to start to undo. And this is when I began to awaken through my pain.
And all that trauma, all that pain, all the experiences that you have, truly a gift in the fact that you're coming from a place right now, and also just from doing my research before we got on the podcast together, a lot of that trauma, the gift in it was it put you and took you in directions that really have prepared you to bring something special to the world from the eyes of, as you said, a sensitive child that didn't know how or couldn't express, and through the covering it up with pain. How's the best way to put this? Pain correcting or pain hiding medication, self-medicating through cocaine, through sex, through even success, looking for success, something that was going to cover up that pain. So where did it take you? Tell us some of the things that you're qualified to do now, and how you bring those qualifications and your unique gifts and talents to the world.
Yeah, definitely. I can kind of sum it up. I could go through a whole list of chronological trainings and everything that I did, but basically the gist of what I want to express is that when I started to find my expression as a writer, I started to understand that I started reading a lot about creativity and creative expression. And what I understood is that I'm an artist. Whether I'm a writer or a painter or a musician, it doesn't matter. I knew that I had an artistic soul and that my soul wanted to be expressed. And so what I started to understand was that I could work in the transformational field and I could be a transformational artist. And that means that I could literally create some programs and courses and methodologies and things like that could help others through their own process. And in that time, I did go and I did get my certifications. I knew I needed professional training. I chose the Ford Institute for Transformational Training. They did my initial coaching training, which was a year long, and a huge transformation in my own life. It allowed me to shift out of living in my mother's basement to having an apartment in Los Angeles and beginning my coaching practice and embarking on a whole new lifestyle of self-expression. I joined a dance community. I got involved in the spiritual community. I was living by the beach. I took up surfing and I was biking all around town. This is what started to awaken for me was the opportunity of a full life. And I wanted to support people in having this kind of a full life. What inhibited me from having a full life was actually the inability to express myself emotionally and having control of my emotions. So what led me initially to do the coaching, I definitely got a lot of skills to help people through the psychology of awakening and understanding their mind. But what I really wanted to understand was the emotions. And that they say that the heart is the gateway to the soul. And I wanted to learn the language of the soul. And so I started embarking on a lot of creativity training and intuitive training. And I also took a course and got certified in emotional freedom techniques. So now I learned all these tools to help people literally dismantle the emotional pain that I felt. I was very attuned to the fact that my heart had this dark layer of pain around it. And a lot of people in the AA community speak of this. I started to learn ways to dissolve that heavy layer of pain around the heart. And when I broke through that and made significant strides, I began to find more ease, more effortlessness, and more connection to my heart and my intuitive calling. And then my life began to flow in a much different path. And so what I'm here to offer now is really guiding people back to their hearts so that they can listen to that intuitive language, the language of the heart, that always wants the best for you, that's always speaking words of support, encouragement, and guidance to you. And it finally gets you off that one-way track of doubt, despair, grief, boredom, fear that the mind is always on. The mind and its critical voice can take us down some really treacherous paths. And I want to help people at this point get back on that path of, which I call the path of the awakened heart, and help them learn this language, this so that they can hear their soul's calling and find their own unique expression in this world. I believe that that's, if you want to talk about world peace, do you know what's going to do it? When every single person can connect to their own heart and give the gift that they're here to offer the world. And then we become this grand mosaic of beauty.
You bet. Bringing those unique gifts and talents to the world through the heart is so spectacular. A matter of fact, I want to share the definition of miracle that we use at Imagine Miracles. It's through an act of love, sharing your gifts and talents with the world so others can share theirs. where's your next step? What would you like to do next? Maybe something that nobody else has heard. What would you like to do next to bring your gifts and talents to the world?
Well, one of the first thing that comes to mind, I got my first little ebook. I got it in front of me here in physical form, not just electronic form. But I wrote a mini book, and it's called The 8 Secrets of the Heart. And I want to get that book out to as many people as possible. Sure, I could charge for it, and I probably will put it on Amazon. But what I'd like to do is give it away when people sign up, to my subscription newsletter, and they can do that by going to tristanmontoya.com. And then what I want to do is put that book in people's hands as a gift. And it's a mini book. It's only 19 pages, but it's a condensed book of wisdom that has come through my own heart's intelligence, my intuitive channel. And it speaks directly to the soul that wants to awaken through these heavy layers of conditioning and help the mind to unlock itself so that we can begin to unlock our own potential. I believe that this book and things like it, this book was inspired by several other things that I've read and authors and mentors that I've had, but this is an expression of my soul. And I want to offer this in a way to awaken people to their divine intelligence, to their soul's calling, to their highest expression, so that they can begin to listen to truth. Now, I'm not saying my truth is everybody's truth, but I want everyone to discover what their truth is and then have the courage to accept it and then move forward towards whatever life is waiting for them. And this is really the impetus. I feel like this book I wanted to write a novel, but as my mentor says, the book that your mind wants to write and your heart wants to write are two different things. This book is what wanted to come through me first. And even though it's short, it's compact and it's full of wisdom. And I believe it's inspiring people to really give themselves permission to walk this true path and to find their unique voice in the world.
You bet. It's an inside-out job, isn't it?
Always.
Could you give us one thing that they could take away today from listening to our conversation that could help break down some of those heavy layers?
Well, the first thing is really sovereignty, personal empowerment. Really what we need to understand is that the choice is always ours. Society will always ask us to live a life that's not true to who we are. It'll always ask us to be someone that we need to be to get the approval of others, to appease others. What we need to do at this point, what I want to offer everyone else, is really giving yourself that permission, really taking control of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. Those are the 3 things that you can do in the world to begin to affect change in your own life. That kind of sovereignty, really becoming your own man, your own woman, and really taking the creative license to express what you have inside of you is a gutsy move. It really is. Most of us will live, as Thoreau said, these lives of what did he say? Desperate, a life of, what did Thoreau say? A life of quiet desperation. That is what he said. And what I remember reading that quote by Henry David Thoreau, and I remember thinking to myself that this is what really does us in, is when we can't. Debbie Ford, to quote my original mentor, she said, all the suffering I see in the world is from people not living their dreams. And so what we need to do is give ourselves permission to live our dream, to give birth to what's inside of ourselves, to be a sovereign being in this world, which sometimes means operating outside of what our family wants for us, what our partner wants for us, what our children want for us, what our friends want for us, and deciding truly what it is that is our soul's calling, and then acting on that, being courageous enough to do the inner work and to basically evolve ourselves above an identity that needs approval so that we can be the full expression of who we are.
Outside of just looking at who you are and why you're here, it's an inside job, and it's an inside out job because, as you say, your family, your parents, your children, the society has no idea who you are until you shine that out into the world. And it's a blessing that you're shining you out into the world and expressing what you're learning, expressing what you know from, as you say, from the heart, and sharing it in ways that people can digest, but also can learn from the example. It's not the book that you're putting out that makes the difference. It's the example you are and how you're living your life and sharing it. Outside of your website, how else can people get in touch with you?
Basically, I keep keep Instagram pretty much updated with everything that's going on in my life and insights and adventures. I'm at Art of Allowance on Instagram, Heart Vision Coaching on Facebook, and that's my Facebook business page. And and then if you just go to the website, then you can sign up for the newsletter. You can get that ebook. And I will be communicating a lot more now through the newsletter, so that I can really create this intimate connection with the readers, with the followers, with my tribe. I'm really looking to create a tribe this year. I want to move into full-scale retreats and transformational experiences. And a lot of this is, I'm calling these experiences to be fully alive, like to really be self-expressed. And a lot of it's going to have to do with really finding that creative self inside of us. So I'm really enjoying the one-to-one work. I've done some what I call VIP days down here with my private clients, where I use a whole host of spiritual practices and trainings and tools that I've gained, and moving into developing retreats this year and running online programs. And so that'll all be communicated through the newsletter. And that's probably the best way to get in touch and to kind of keep abreast of what's going on with me.
Excellent. So all that information I'll make available on the show page to the listeners. Just to go to themiracleyou.com, look for the show page for Tristan Montoya's interview with us today. Tristan, it was so great to have you here. Thank you for the information. Thank you for finding yourself. Thank you for awakening. Thank you for bringing your gifts and talents to the world.
My pleasure, Vince. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. On behalf of my wife, Mary, and the entire imagination, have a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 Mind Awakening Steps Toward Your Unique Purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.